Hey, my mic's unmuted. Look at me. I'm a grown-up. I know how to stream. All right, welcome back to the not muted live stream. Total professional. Um, so we're back on OnRamp. Anybody who hasn't tuned in before, OnRamp is an application that I'm building for making it as easy as possible for a new developer to enter the Laravel community and to be able to get a Laravel job as quickly as possible. So what we're in the middle of doing is taking what is currently onramp.dev, where this learn page has very, very simple stuff that's powered just by a static HTML array or PHP array, and we are trying to move to the point where it's powered by a database instead. And so in previous streams, what we had been doing was reworking, building out the database structure for all the different entities that we're going to have. And what we're going to do now is continue building out, pulling that data from the database and actually putting it onto the page. So we actually had a somewhat functioning version of this last time. And when I came in and I logged into this new modules page right here, we're seeing this error. It says call to member function completed modules on null. Now, this is not what it's going to look like in modern apps because this is Laravel 5.8. I will upgrade it over to Laravel 6.2, I think is the latest, later, and we will get Ignition, which is a new error screen. But Ignition is an error screen that is really just an supercharged. Oh, you know what? I didn't tweet it out. I keep doing this. Hit the tweet button. Going to go live. Hopefully it works. Okay, cool. So Ignition is basically a supercharged theme on top of Whoops. This is Whoops right here, and Ignition is just Whoops with a couple extra features and a theme. So it should work functionally pretty much the same. So when you're running these issues, one of the things that people have been telling me recently is that learning how to debug is actually a very difficult part of it. So another streamer, PHP streamer, a good friend of mine who goes by Spabby, says run Psalm in your code base. And he was actually streaming this morning using this thing called Psalm PHP, which is a kind of like a checker for your code, but it's all about strictness and types and stuff like that, which is not, honestly, I'm not going to say this is entirely true, but it's very unlikely that any of my code bases would play nicely with Psalm. So maybe, oh, yeah, level 1, yeah. So, because I write my code as loosely as possible, and Psalm wants you to be as strict as possible. So people have been mentioning that debugging, no, don't be sorry, it's fine. And so people have been mentioning that debugging is one of the hardest things for them to learn up front. So let's do a really quick debugging here. It's funny, I actually had an error come in through Bugsnag this last week that I was going to show you all because I thought it was because I'd done a problem in validation, and then it turns out it was user error, and so it wasn't actually something. But here, we had an error here. So call to a member function complete modules on null. So we look at completed modules. So this method right here is being called on null, which means this right here is returning null. And this right here returns null if you don't have a logged in user, which means we are allowing people to reach this page when they shouldn't be, which means we're missing an auth guard. So right here, where we allow you to visit this modules page, we're not doing anything to ensure that you have logged in. Previously, these were within a guard, and I actually, when I did all this locale stuff, I got rid of that. So we'll probably have that same problem on the home page. I bet that if you're not logged in, you can get to the home page even though you shouldn't. Right, you shouldn't be here if you're not logged in. And so that route group is missing. So what you do is you make a new route group, and you want to basically put a guard on it. And so the guard is a middleware, and the middleware that you want is auth. I think it's actually just auth. And so then basically what we're doing is everything within this route group is now going to be wrapped with this middleware that basically just says ensure that this person is logged in, right? So you just grab these and you just throw them up there. So grab, throw. I'm trying to remember to do less keyboard movements that make it difficult for people to follow what I'm doing. So that's why I'm using the mouse more than usual. All right, so this route group, everything within this closure, now will work exactly the same, but if you have not logged in, it should now boot you back in, probably to the login page is my guess. Oh, and so what it does is it runs you through this thing where it tries to send you back to the login page. However, our login page is expecting you to be in a particular locale. And so one of the things that we did when I added that locale is that anytime anywhere in the entire app uses the route helper, it now actually needs to use the route with locale helper, or it needs to pass in a locale thing. And so all of the native Laravel methods that call routes will get the same error. John, well, you know, I was going to make a joke about your last name being Sugar, but I will not do that. So basically something in here, so this is going to be more opportunity for us to do debugging. Something in here is calling this route, and it's calling a route to the login route probably. And normally you would do that by doing something like this, either route login or auth.login or whatever it is. And it doesn't need any parameters, but because our login route, which is defined here, is translated, that means you actually have to be able to tell it anytime you're saying send me over to login route, what's this parameter here? Because on a normal Laravel app, it would be like myapp.com/login. Well, in our app, it's myapp.com/en or es or whatever, basically the language /login. And so all of a sudden, these generic routes that normally don't need parameters all of a sudden need routes. So let's do a little bit more time looking into how to debug. So you've got your stack trace down here, and it basically says the first thing that came in was here, and then the last thing where it hit the error is here. So by default, it's going to show you the last thing. But the last thing is often actually the error being generated, not the thing that caused the error to be generated. So as you can see here, the last thing is an exception. Well, that doesn't tell us which of our code caused the problem. So you do is you kind of go back through here, and you can notice that you're seeing all these illuminate ones, and you want to get back to one where it's your code or close to your code. And again, if you're using Ignition, which is the new wrapper on top of this, it makes it a lot clearer to be able to look at your code and ignore the vendor code. Gummy Beer says you can use an event listener to make normal route login work again instead of replacing all normal route calls. Spabby, have you considered dropping Ignition? Yeah, I will bring Ignition, but what I'm more likely to do, Gummy Beer, you might have just taught me something. I am so happy if you just taught me something. Frank says, Frank, creator of Ignition, co-creator of Ignition, says, what's that ugly error page? So the only reason I didn't drop it Ignition is because we're about to upgrade. And so I wanted to just, you know, we're going to get Ignition for free when we upgrade to Laravel 6.1 or whatever the latest is anyway. Yeah, exactly. So, but this URL defaults thing is something I haven't run into before, and that could actually have solved our problem here. So I want this, so Gummy Beer is saying that we can just run defaults on the app service provider. And we can run it in a service provider so far anywhere. And you can just say, anytime you're asking for this locale, pass it in. And if I knew this, I don't remember it. So let's just do this and see what happens. Gummy Beer, handle locale updated event, void, set locale. I don't think we actually need all of that. I'm not sure what this event locale is that you're talking about. Locale updated. Oh, if we were doing eventing. Well, what I'm thinking right here, so the locale is parsed on the in the app service provider. So we basically have it here, right? We've got it here. So now, in theory, I can just set this URL defaults in here, right? Assuming that this is early enough, and I think it probably is. Yes, we have to import that. Remember, with facades, you have to import them when you're using them in a namespace class. Okay, that didn't work. Shame, no Ignition. Yeah, we'll have Ignition as soon as we upgrade. Be patient. You'll have to add Ignition manually if you upgrade. Do you really? Huh. Gummy Beer says, so Gummy Beer, the thing is, the locale's not really changing other than just by the URL changing. So the locale here is not changing by a cookie or anything like that happening. The locale is, hold on. The locale is happening basically just when it parses it here. So this right here is happening, but this URL defaults thing seems to not be happening. Or I don't think it's possible for us to be getting to this redirect before we actually hit our app service provider, although I guess it's possible if I'm, like, I assume that we're hitting this first, right? When's this being called? It's being called in a middleware. So what I was originally going to do was to show you all. Yeah, I know that you can use Ignition now, but I did not know, or I did not think about the fact that even when we upgrade, we're going to have to manually add it anyway. So maybe we'll add Ignition in a bit. So app HTTP middleware authenticate. So this right here is where it's happening. So all we technically have to do right here is just route with locale. I'm very interested in this URL defaults concept, so I do want to look into it a little bit later, but I don't want to spend my whole stream on that. So Gummy Bear, thank you so much for sharing that with me, and hopefully we can figure out why that wasn't working later, because I'm super interested in that. So in theory, if I go to es/login, or es/home, I should also get redirected to es/login. Yep, there we go. I'm trying to find some GitHub repos from well-known people that work on Laravel. I'm making a mess of my code and want to see how to improve. Reading articles and getting a bit bored. Any tips? Yeah, Spotsy and Titan both have projects that are public. If you want a full SaaS, Symposium is old. The problem with Symposium is I originally built it off of my first ever public SaaS. And so there's code in there that is from like at least Laravel 4 that has been slowly upgraded over time. But Symposium is one. We have a couple others. We've got Gislog and we've got Giscus, although Giscus doesn't work anymore. But Gislog is like a fully log-inable app. I'm trying to think about what other apps we have that are public. Spotsy, I don't know how many SaaSes they have. I think most of what they have is packages. But yeah. Ignition is a package included in the default composer JSON, L6, and upgrades. Yeah, I heard you all. I get it now. I think I'm not going to be able to get away without not adding Ignition. So I actually don't know what's the it's because I think they use some like new name, right? Or not framework, Laravel for the Ignition. No, not next either. Yeah, I'm not getting away without adding this. So. I was just going to say I don't remember what their facade, that was the name of their thing. All right, so we're going to go in and we're going to add it. Let's figure out what we did. So this is going to be app logged pages with off guard, fix login redirect. Okay, we're going to composer require facade. Require facade / ignition dev. Cool. We should think about adding ignition. Thanks, Frig. Like, there's other things to do other than add ignition, but obviously nobody's playing around with me on that. So nobody's trying to hear anything other than ignition. So we'll like the ignition. It's fine. Yeah, okay, so, but yeah, Gumira, thank you so much for that idea. I'm very interested to learn about that sometime when I'm not thrashing. So now we're at this point where we have to log in, and now we're back to our modules page that we were building earlier. Okay, so what were we building? We were building this modules show page. And on this page here, what we want to do is basically generate the equivalent of onramp.dev /en/learn, but we want it to be database backed. And obviously, not obviously, but one of the issues here is that the layout is very different because each module gets its own page. And so remember, I built this page in Tailwind, but almost everything on this page right here is not actually being generated by the database. Most of this stuff is just static Tailwind. Democratic power and action of adding ignition. Did a stream with Frake on Ignition Flare last week. Anyone watch the VOD, check out my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/spabby. What are we building today? I'll tell you in a second. Great VOD, nice Spabby. Yeah, y'all should, if you all have not yet, Spabby is a good friend and a great streamer, and you should definitely check out his streams. Okay, cool. So what we are building today is we're trying to get to what I would like to do is I would like for onramp.dev to actually be served by this branch that we've been working on for all these streams. And this branch is the branch that is a database-backed version of onramp rather than a PHP array-backed version. And so today what we're trying to do is to get this module to actually correctly output all the data from Eloquent in here. We lost 45 minutes to various other things. And then theoretically get rid of all the to-dos so that we can replace the learn page with the modules page. That's the goal. We'll see how far we can make it. All right, so on this modules page, some of the stuff is actually iterating over this. So for example, the skills section right here is actually going through that. Although one thing we noticed last time is we had this concept of bonus skills, which we forgot to add. And so I think what we didn't do here, yeah, so we need to add the concept of bonus here. Add the concept of bonus to skills and resources. Because we want to be able to say, these are the skills you must, and then these are the skills that you might want to do for fun. And it's in the designs, but it is not in our code. All right, so we got rid of the quizzes and exercises stuff because we're not going to do those right now. So we're going to move on to trying to get the resources and have them correctly come from the content. So what we had started doing last time was saying, well, we pulled all the resources here, but we need to now group them. Videos and courses versus articles and audio, free versus paid, all that kind of stuff. So the first thing I said was, well, we got our free resources and we've got our paid resources. So first of all, this may not be how we end up doing it in the end, but we're going to take all of our resources and say where is free is false is free resources, and then theoretically we could just do the same thing down below. But why don't we just do this right here? Paid resources is where it's true, although that's not true. Free is where it's true. Paid is where it's false. Oh yeah, it's because last time I was writing is paid instead of is free. And then now we need to scope down into where the type is video, and you can see I had left it to do there. I don't know if that's actually the right syntax for type, but let's just try it out. So for each free resources where type equals video, all. I'm trying to remember what the structure is. I kind of think that it's a Eloquent collection here. So let's just try that. As resource, and then something like this. So let's grab it, throw it in there just like we did with skills, and then see where that takes us. So this is going to be the name of the resource, and then this is going to be, I think it might actually just have a URL on it, and let's just see where that takes us. All right, so some great intro. Above this is DB. So we're not getting anything there. So let's figure out why we're not getting anything. Free resources. Oh, you know what? Let's do a migrate fresh seed just to make sure we have all of our stuff in there. This is my whole setup, including all full classes of your interest for later. Thank you. I would love to take a look at that. John says, sound like MX Brown switches. It's an advantage to Kinesis, which is probably MX Brown is my guess. That's my keyboard that he's talking about if anybody else doesn't know. Boom, there we go. All right, so we got our free courses there. So now we can, and actually let's just go throw an error and see how Ignition treats us. I'm assuming that I'm going to have to like publish something or register or something like that, right? Now that we pulled Ignition in. Optionally publish, I don't want to. Add this method to your handler file. There you go. And this is my report, I assume. Oh, this is a method called whoops handler. Oh, interesting. I didn't know that that actually existed as a method. So we must be extending a native Laravel method called whoops handler. I'm curious where that's defined. Huh, look at that. So basically the default Laravel exception handler has a whoops handler method. And right now it's just the default one, and this allows you to override it so that you can make your own default whoops handler. And what they do is they, instead of newing up the actual whoops handler itself, they just say, give me an instance of the handler interface, which I'm assuming has been bound in a service provider. There's probably an Ignition service provider that probably binds well, anyway, whatever. It binds the their whoops handler into this interface so that we get an instance of theirs instead of whoops's. And the nice thing here is it basically is saying, well, for some reason you can't do that, well, then just go back to whatever the default is. So you're not going to have a permanent permanent loop of errors on errors on errors if it has any problem returning this. So go team. All right, so I had done something bad. Let's see, sneakily PR'd that method. Oh, so it wasn't there before. I love it. So here we go. Here's our ignition. Y'all happy now? This is ignition. Okay, cool. Let's actually, is that all we did? Let's go back to our GitHub desktop. Let's see, am I on the right one? Okay, cool, I'm on the right one. All right, so we don't want to commit everything we did. We only want to commit the things that have to do with ignition. So add ignition. Okay, cool. Complain. Yuppie? Oh, Yuppie. Got it. Okay. So we are now serving free resources, but in theory, that's not actually the free resources. That's just the free resources for nuts. Oh, actually, no, that's correct, because that's where type is video. So as you can see, there's a lot of duplication here. So there's a very good chance we'll kind of come up with a little bit of a slicker way of doing this, where we're not just copying the same code over and over and over again. What is the video? I actually don't know what the type is. Let's look at what our types are. And this might actually be, so for anybody who was around a couple streams ago, the type right now is just strings, but we had added a to-do somewhere to use some kind of structured system for what the different types are. And the reason I didn't then is because I've changed what these types are multiple times. I think I'm pretty happy with this, but we'll have to come up with good names for, you can see we have 3 different types right now: videos, courses, articles and audio, and books. One of the questions is going to be, are articles and audio a single type named articles and audio, or are they going to be 2 different ones that we actually are just grouping together in the user interface? I'm kind of leaning towards there are 2 different types that we're grouping together in the interface. Joe, do you think I should add ignition? What do you think? Okay, so let's go take a look at, what did I just do? Okay, cool. Let's go take a look at our, what is this, the resource factory, and our type can be video, book, or text. And so, sorry, there's work being done in my office and it smells like they're burning something. Hey Chris, thanks. It's going well today other than the potential burning smell in my office. So if I just run away, it's because somebody is burning something somewhere. Oh, you know what? I bet you they just turned on the heat for the first time. And that's that smell of the, oh, it smells awful. Holy crap, that smells bad. It smells really bad. I don't have a window that I can open, or I'd be opening it right now. Okay, so back to this. So here was the potential types that we said. So there's a couple different ways that you might allow for your different types. One of them is using a separate enum class, and one of them is to put everything on here. And so people will often do something like this, like const video type equals video or something like that, and then you'll also probably have a method that kind of like lists them all out as types or something like that. I'm not sure which way I want to do it still, and I still haven't figured out. I think I'm inclined to, like I said, do video, course, article, audio, and book as our types. So I don't actually want to just sit around in this forever. So we're just going to video, course, audio, book, text. Oh my god, I can barely breathe. It smells so bad. Video, course, article, audio, text is, oh, text was what article was. And then a book. Is there any value in differentiating videos versus video courses? I'm going to say yes, because they're not the same. Like a single YouTube video is not the same as like an Adam Watson style course. And articles and audio are not the same. The fact that we're grouping them is a coincidence of the user interface that might change later. So it's good to have that metadata separate. So video, a course, audio is like probably like a podcast episode. Book is a book. Text, I guess I'm not sure. I might just rename text as article, I think, and then we'll go with that for now. So let's try to decide whether it's worth making the decision today of where we're going to store those. No, because I'm still not sure. So we're just going to keep at it right now. We have a to-do that we need to actually structure that at some point. So, okay, cool. So I think you can do where in. So this is going to be video course. So this is going to be where in course. Use enum classes because it's clean to use them in test. Yeah, we're going to do, enum classes are cleaner in test versus putting them on the method. Yeah, I'm probably going to do enum class rather than a thing on the Eloquent model itself. And that's what I said last time. I think I prefer the enum class, but I just wanted to make sure. All right, so this is article or audio. And then I guess there's none. Let's go do another artisan migrate fresh seed so we can see if we can get a couple more. We keep not getting articles, so let's see database seeder. Have I manually defined the type, or is the type being factoried on our resources? The type is being factored in our resources. So it's a little strange to me. I kind of think that we may end up having to also create a bunch more resources just so we have more seed generated resources as well. And so we're just going to do factory resource class create. The way you create multiple has changed over time. I think this is the way to do it these days. I think. So by doing that, we're just going to create a whole bunch of other fake ones in there, so we've got more of them. There we go. Okay. So let's go to our paid resources and do the same thing. So what I normally would do is just like kind of extract a thing, because free resources and paid resources are almost exactly the same, but they're not quite because they've got different groupings. And so then you start getting tempted to extract them out into like array-based structures and iterating over those. And for now, I think I'm just going to throw them on the page just with the same for each, because I don't know whether, again, I don't know whether this is the structure we're going to end up with. And if I don't know if this is the structure we're going to end up with, then it's silly to do a whole bunch of abstraction when we don't know if we're abstracting toward what the actual final thing is going to be. But it does feel very smelly to me, as I'm sure it does to you all. That we have this, that we have this in here at all. Also, we're going to have to go back to all of these and program their checked method to make them work. All right, so this is the new book. All right, so we have no books, which is fine. It does make you think that we might want to do a for else or for empty or whatever the one is for that. So let's work on these checkboxes real quick. Why are these all checked when the checked is empty? I mentioned this last time, but the way checked should be passed has changed by browsers over time. You can create a partial blade to show items to avoid code repeated, and we'll likely create our partial of just this li. This is probably the simplest partial that we can create. The question is, are there going to be broader partials? But I think that this right here is going to be a partial, and then I'll go through and replace all of them. But it's looking like at least Chrome, even when you do checked equals this, ends up checking it. So we're just going to, basically, historically you did checked versus not checked, but then at some point some of the browsers wanted checked equals something. So I think we're going to be able to do this now. So basically it's going to be, if it should be checked, then pass in the phrase checked. And I actually think that we did that on the modules page, modules index page. Yeah, here you go. So this is going to be something like right here, we're going to say if completed resources. And this is where we started realizing that we're going to need a whole bunch of lists of completed things on this page. Where did that come from? If completed resources contains the resource ID, then checked. Otherwise, nothing. And apparently, we can just do this. Well, whatever. I'll just leave it like that because it's working. But that means we need the completed resources. And this is one of the reasons why you don't want to extract your partials early, because what is being checked against here will depend on what type of thing it is. It's likely that all of the resources can be one partial, all the skills can be another partial. But again, like, we don't technically know. So let's just get this functioning, and then we'll probably extract at least the resource list to a checklist, or to a partial, I mean. Okay, so we need all of the completed resources available to us for this user, and we don't have it right now. So we are on the module controller, and we know, so for example, on the modules index page, we passed in the list of their completed modules. So we're probably also now going to have to pass in the list of their completed resources. So one of the things we can do is just get all of their completed resources and pass it in here. The thing is, we actually only need the list of completed resources for this particular module. So then we're going to have to start asking the questions of, are we going to scope that down in certain ways? And that I just don't know the answer yet. So we're going to do this. We're going to say completed resources equals all of the completed resources they've completed across the whole site. And we're just going to pluck it just like that. And I'm guessing completed resources doesn't exist. Yeah, it doesn't exist. So we had some tests for completed modules, I believe. So what we would do is we'd add another test here for completed resources. So user can list completed resources, which is going to fail off the bat. So instead of completing a module, we're gonna, I don't remember if we create a resource. I think if we create a resource, it'll automatically create all the things that it relies on. I think we built it out that way. So we basically want to create two resources and say when we complete one of them, then let's just completed modules and completed resources, and then other resource. Okay, so we want to be able to say the user has two resources available to them. They're going to complete resource but not complete other resource, and you want to make sure that this completed resources thing contains the completed one but doesn't contain the non-completed one. All right, so PHP unit. I'm just going to remember to zoom these in for y'all, sorry. Okay, so we get a big long stack trace of nastiness, and it actually doesn't like one of our migrations. So when we add this migration, we haven't run our tests since, because we added the slug thing right at the end. You can't add a not null column with default value of null. So when we were doing this work together last time, we added a new migration because we realized that the modules needed to have a slug so they could have a nice pretty URL. So this slug cannot be null, but we're not providing a default, which is fine unless you're running in SQLite. And the problem is our tests are currently running in SQLite. So if we were in production, this might be a moment where we would choose to run our tests locally in MySQL instead of SQLite. But because all this work we're doing here has not actually been pushed to any live servers, what I'm instead going to do is just go to our modules table, and I'm just going to add the slug right there. And then I'm going to just delete this add slug to modules table, and then I'm just going to remigrate. And we can do this as long as we're the only person working on this, and this has never actually been run in any real code. So now let's try it again, and we should get that error anymore. So first of all, let's just run our full PHP unit and see what errors we're getting. They're all about user can complete. So trying to get the property name of non-object, the module factory is having a problem. Module that's getting passed in, of course. So last time we said, I want to make my slug based on running string slug on the name that was generated earlier. But this thing right here is not an Eloquent instance of the module. It is an array of the previously seeded one. So it shouldn't be module name, it should be module name. Typing is hard. Okay, take two. Okay, so we have one error, call to member pluck unnull, and this is the one we're working on right now. User can list completed resources. That makes sense. So let's go look, get rid of all the stuff we just did, and go back over to our test. So we want to scope it down here again. Okay, so we're scoping it just to this one, call to member pluck on null, completables test line 73. And it's trying to pluck off of the complete resources. Well, first of all, it should be completed resources. But we'll still get that same error because we haven't actually programmed this completed resources method, our relationship yet. So we want to go to our user and look down. We've got completed modules right here. So now let's look up our completed resources. So remember, we made a completions relationship, which is all the things that I've completed, and we want to find all the completed ones where the resource or the type is of a resource instead of a module. So in theory, now there we go. We've got this completed resources method, and we're able to figure out which we've attached to each one. All right, great. So now when we go, so we wrote that method, we tested it, so now this should work. So great. So now we have knowledge of which of these resources have and have not been completed. And our checkbox here is being set based on which of these resources have or have not been completed. So in theory, if we were to go basically add or delete completions, then these checkboxes should become unchecked. So why don't we do that real quick? Just a reminder, anybody who hasn't streamed with me before, I always censor before I open up things like Table Plus because you can see a list of all my clients and stuff like that. So I want to open up OnRamp and Table Plus, and then we're back. All right, and now we want to go to completions. So if, you know what? I didn't modify, that's why. I didn't modify the template to have this little syntax right here, except for on this one, because we were about to pull it out to a partial. So let's make that partial. So I like to put things in views/partials. And so what's this partial type? For right now, we're just going to make a single partial. It's going to be called item on module page. And an item for us is just going to be this right here. And it needs to have passed to it its completed list. I'm going to name it completeds and item. And we pray that they all use name. If we don't, then we're going to have to change this instead of being. So that's actually the question here. Let's actually make this just a resource in the module page instead of an item in the module page, because then we don't have to worry about renaming and passing through all these things. And if we decide to extract that back out later, we will. But for now, we're just going to rename it to resource on module page. Okay, so we're not going to put all of our items in that way. We're only going to do it for this one. So include partials dot resource on module page. Okay, cool. So we should be able to do that, and it should look exactly the same as it did before, which it does. But now we can go to all the other ones, all these other for eaches, and then throw it in exactly the same way. And now we will get that checkbox work we did for free. One more time, I don't know what this emote is. Oh no, you're on YouTube, so I get to call an emoji. That is monkey, not C. What am I doing that you don't like, Vitor? How are you judging me? Okay, great. So in theory, none of these are completed, and so that's that. So let's see. Let's add a completion for one of those resources. So we'll do resource ID 2. We want a completion. So how do we do that? Well, we create user ID 1, resource ID 2. Completable type is going to be app/resource. Complete that. And then in theory, I think it was this one right here, should be checked off now. Okay, what did I do wrong? Intro to CSS. So the resource ID 2 is intro to CSS at CSS Tricks. I don't think we have 2 with that same name. Or are you just closing your eyes? Oh, when it was censored. Got it. I get it now. So it's a course, and I am user 1. Yep. And I'm looking at the resource 2, and I have a completion that says user ID 1 has completed completable ID 2 with completable type of app/resource. I'm a little surprised that that's not working, so let's go see what I'm missing. All right, so first thing we want to do is take a look at what our completed resources. So for this user, we should see just the ID of 2, I believe. And so one of the things that has been mentioned recently, oh, why is the ID of 1? Oh, because we don't want the completed, well, no, wait, we do want the completed resource ID. What's going on? Okay, step back. Completed resources is not completed resources. These are completions. That's why. All right, so what we need to do is go back to our completables test, and I think that we have one of those accidental things where if we were to complete the second one instead of the first one, it wouldn't be working. And I think it's because I mixed up that these completed resources are not the resources themselves. They are the completion, which is not the same. I think that my tests totally failed to consider that. Is this Java? Close. It's PHP. Riz, Carolyn, pluck completable. Exactly. Well, I wanted to pluck on the completable, but I wanted to pluck the completable ID. Instead, I plucked the ID itself. So, yeah, I believe that I failed there. And so what I should have been doing on these is plucking the completable ID, which kind of makes me think if it was that easy for me to miss that, then we probably will need to come up with some other affordance to make it easier to not miss that. So we're doing the same thing here. Modules. Oops. So that works right now, but it's working. It shouldn't be working. You can see that. Okay, so it fails, but it will start working again once we actually pluck the correct thing. Java is not close to PHP. The syntax for Java and the syntax for PHP can be very similar. All right, so what that means is when we're plucking the ID here for completed modules, it actually should be completable ID. And for here, this should be completable ID. And that kind of makes me think that we might want to start actually writing tests on what we are passing into these controllers. And one of the things you can do assertions on in Laravel is these properties right here. So you can basically write something along the line of like, modules index page is correctly passed uncompleted module IDs. And so we would basically write a test that ensures that we don't remake the same mistake, because our tests are good here, but these tests rely on us plucking this completable ID correctly. And so you could have your tests working here and then accidentally pluck the ID instead of the completable ID here and still have it be a failure. And so that's why sometimes you want to either move this completed modules pluck completable IDs into a method named something like completed module IDs, which is one option, or you want to test what's being passed in the controller here. Remember when I actually wrote this originally, I was saying completed module IDs. Java is not close to PHP even alphabetically. I almost made this a completed module IDs method. And if I had made that method, which felt a little bit dirty, I wouldn't have run into this problem. So that's an indication that it would be potentially wise, instead of testing what's going in this controller, instead saying, hey, we have multiple times where we're plucking out the IDs, and it's very easy to accidentally pluck the ID instead of the completable ID. We might want to do this. And honestly, there's another problem there, which is this is not really completed modules. This is module completions. In order to get completed modules, you would have to basically like get the related modules off of them. And so that's the really interesting thing, is these are completions of type module and of type resource. And I think that's our I think we probably would have done a better job of catching that if we had named this more appropriately. So module completions, pluck completable ID, and this is resource completions, pluck completable ID, and then our test is going to need that too. So completed modules is going to be module completions, and then completed resources is going to be resource completions. Let's see how many things I broke when I refactored all that stuff at once. Hey, okay. So how are we doing now? Okay, so the one that we checked off the database actually checked off, and that's why sometimes you just gotta go try the thing out with real data. Okay. You can't actually check them off right now, so that's probably something we're gonna need to do. Didn't update the DD? I deleted the DD is what I did. No DD no more. It's funny because I've been in a lot of conversations lately where we're talking about how we want to increase the usage of debugging tools, not just DD or DDD or whatever else, but things like Xdebug. And it's funny because on the one hand, I really want us to all be using that. On the other hand, those tools aren't available to newcomers. And so one of the things we need to do is make those tools available to newcomers more easily, more readily. Because right now, DD is available to anybody who's using Laravel at all, and a lot of the debug tooling we want is not. And so I use the DD and stuff like that, even though I would like to help us all be having better ways. Okay, so what are the next steps we need to get to launch? I want to rework this next steps.markdown thing to say what are basically what's necessary to launch the DB-backed version. So checkboxes need to work. Or be disabled. Well, no, because if you can't check them off and you have them there, it's going to work or be hidden, which I might actually just make them hidden, just so we can launch it and then iterate. We don't actually need the order of modules in order to launch it. We can add that over time. We do need to must verify emails. Too late to care about it too much. Handle bonus material, so we don't have just a whole bunch of to-dos all over. Write intro content on modules.index and modules.show. Don't know if you talked about it in earlier streams, but if you consider moving the completable methods into a trait. No, because they're only going to be used on this one. There's sometimes a reason to move things to a trait, even though they won't be reused. So for example, this would be something like completes things, but it's not going to be used anywhere else. And so my native inclination is to not worry about that until we have a better sense of, well, I don't know. I don't know if I want to extract it at all. But right now, this is not some astronomically long class or anything like that. So I could imagine saying, yeah, the completions in their own will give you completions, complete, undo complete, module completions, resource completions, skill completions. So I can imagine that we might hit there eventually. Actually, now that I mentioned that, skill completions, do you stream HTML too? I primarily am streaming Laravel, Vue.js, React, and then application architecture. There is, I do HTML as part of it. Like I built out this page in HTML, but I'm seldom going to be streaming myself doing only HTML. So the thing I noticed was that we don't have this checkedness on the skills right now. So I don't know why I have value. Oh, I have values on because it was just that way from my the template I got this from. All right, so we're going to throw the same thing in real quick on our skills. We've got about 10 minutes left, so I'm trying to wrap up a little bit, but also make a little bit of progress. All right, so then we need completed skills as well. And having to pass these scopes of completed X and completed Y is feeling kind of smelly to me. And so I think that might be something where we're going to end up making some modifications there. Okay, look at that beautiful ignition error. It's because we don't have completed skills. An interesting thing to note is that it's also not really completed skills, it's really completed skill IDs. So we might actually modify that too. But let's just go in there and just say, okay, user can list completed skills. Oh, and also this is not completed skills, this is module completion. And this is resource completions. And this is skill completions. All right, and is Magnus Carlsen? I don't know who Magnus Carlsen is, but does Magnus Carlsen have a username similar to Dr. Drunkenstein06, which is a very funny username, by the way. Okay, so this anything in here that says resource is actually going to end up being skill. Oop, missed one. He's the undisputed world chess champion for 7 years now. That's awesome. Okay, so user can listen. So the user, we've got one skill, we've got another skill. The user completes the second skill, and then we check the skill completions to make sure that they correctly contain them. All right. So PHP unit filter that test. That test fails because we didn't import the skill class. All right, now it fails because we have not written the skill completions method. So we're going to go over to user, and we're going to write out skill completions, just like resource completions. And once you have 3 of the same thing repeated, that's when you start asking yourself the question of whether you want to extract. So one way to extract would be a method for just getting completions that have match a single class. But that's not simplifying it as much as it could. You could also make these scopes on the completions. So basically this completions modules, that's, I think, is more likely what we're going to do. Typing is still hard. Let's get this test working, and then we'll look into that really quick. Whoops, probably typed something wrong. Yep, two things at the same time. All right, cool. So our tests work now. They're all green, and that means that page is probably going to load correctly. Nope, because we didn't add it to the module controller. So completed resources, so this also needs completed skills. Okay. Unexpected syntax error, because there's no commas at the end of these. All right, cool. So now we know whether our skills are completed or not. So what I want to do is go to our completion and add scopes for the different types. No, completable type is all right. So what we're doing basically is come on, sorry, something about typing in public. We're basically making a scope for each of these. So we've got modules here. So this is going to be resources, and then this is going to be skills, and I'm going to type completable correctly. And then in theory, we can go to these methods here and scope them and make a single method instead. And so this is going to be basically modules, resources, skills. I think that's going to work. If not, we'll learn. There we go. Cool. So we just cleaned that up a little bit. And we're still doing multiple database queries here, which I don't love. We're getting the module. We're getting the related query with all of its resources, and then we're also going through all the completions. To get this page, we're going through these 4. But in theory, these are the only 2 that can be really conveniently joined, and that doesn't bother me that much right now. If we wanted to, we could do a single query to the auth user's completions and then filter here and filter here. So we might do that later. But our view works, our PHP unit tests work, and So let's do a manual check to make sure that completing a skill also completes the thing on the. All right, so we got skill 1 and skill 2 here. So let's do the same thing we did here, where we complete user ID is going to complete skill 2. And then in theory, one of these should get checked. Bam! All right, cool, that's working. So obviously none of these are actually listening right now. We don't have bonus skills. But I believe that all these pieces of content are now correctly filled based on our modules. So we should be able to go to all the other modules and we should see stuff that looks a little bit more like what we're actually seeing. It seems like we do. We don't have an empty state for these, but you know what? Let's add an empty state. I was gonna say because we don't plan to have it, but it's possible that there's some content that just doesn't have it. So let's see if we can handle all these. Why am I not getting the rest of those? Oh, because the rest of them aren't on modules. All right, so you basically want to replace this with a for else and then empty. And basically the for else says treat this as a for each, and then this is what happens when you don't have anything, no resources. And then you change this to an end for else. And I think all of these in here will actually be end for else. I don't think there's any of them that won't be end for else. And I don't think we have any for eaches that shouldn't be a for else either. Nope. So we can make each of these for else. And then I believe we can just do our empty. I think that's going to work. Oops, no resources. Oh, right, because the we got rid of the li stylings because of the checkbox for functions. So. All right, cool. Okay, so let's look at next steps, and I got to wrap it up. Checkboxes need to work or be hidden next time. Handle bonus material. And then write intro content in the modules. And I kind of think that if we do that, we can merge it, and then the rest of these can all be done after we launch this particular branch. All right, so just trying to look at which of these are now handled up here. Migrate all content database headers. Right now, we're just going to do everything in database headers. Later, we'll actually allow for like modifying the content in Nova or something. But right now, it's just going to be able to be have those particular things be reseeded when they need. Okay, cool. So this one was actually harder work than I expected. I kind of thought we were going to kind of knock this out, but there were some kind of complicated things in here. So we've got a few remainders left. We've got this to do. We're going to handle these checkboxes in Vue.js next time. I love React, but Vue is much more prominent in the community. I think it's easier for beginners. And we'll probably add like a back button. And but yeah, so you're going to see all of your, so you see all your modules for each of the modules. So you can see which of them you've completed. And then under each of your modules, you see all your resources and skills, and you can check them off. And then eventually you'll also be able to check off the module here. I thought I added that last time, but I guess not, but you'll at least be able to check it off here. Do we care that users will have to register in the live site to see what's there? It's still in an alpha state, so that seems weird to me. I have a hard stop at noon, so I'll just say decide, do we show the content to non-login users? I'm inclined to say yeah, like have a page that shows all the content and just doesn't require them to log in, because it's not like we're trying to hide it from anybody. So even to the point where we might allow these pages to exist exactly as they are to the public, but then have a prompt that says, do you want to track your progress through these? You know, log in. All right, thank you everybody for coming to hang out. It was a total pleasure as always talking to you all. I think if I hit CU, you can still hear me at least. So I thought I had an outgoing one, but yeah, thank you all for hanging out. It was a ton of fun. You all helped me quite a bit. I learned some new things. And next time, I really hope that the next time, which I think is this Friday at 11 Eastern, so same time on this Friday, we will be able to actually launch this version of it. Fingers crossed. Thanks for hanging out, folks.